Joining me now is Israeli Ambassador to Ireland, Dana Erlich. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Ambassador, what is dramatic about this move? We already know 140 countries have made these moves, and they're Israel-friendly countries.
But we are making a distinction between what happened before and what happened since October 7th. And right now, the timing is questionable. Why impose such a step right now? Why impose such a step, such a recognition that Hamas so quickly welcomed and thanked these countries? Now, I understand that these countries don't want to listen to us when we say that this is a prize for terrorism. But when Hamas comes out and thanks them and says that these recognitions are a direct result of what they call resistance and what is actually the brutal attacks of October 7th and since. And this is what we are rejecting. At the moment, it's not about a future possible Palestinian state. It's not about the recognition of the nationality or their right for self-determination. It's not about that. It's about the timing that we are questioning and opposing.
And so how much of these decisions how much of an effect can it actually have?
Well, we've seen in 2014, when Sweden recognized the so-called Palestinian state, it made no difference on the ground. The lives of the Palestinians did not improve. It did not promote peace. And this is why right now, promoting such a step only enforces and encourages Hamas and actually weakens the moderate voices. So if you're doing a symbolic event, a recognition or announcement, why do it now? This is what we're asking. And again, if you're worried about the people in Gaza, how did this improve their lives, living under Hamas regime and under their rule of brutality, not just against us, but against their own populations? How is that helping the Palestinians in Gaza?
The understanding, I suppose, would be that the recognition coming from these countries is in order to change the global narrative of discussions for a Palestinian state. So maybe this is actually the goal?
But right now, I'll separate. We're in the midst of a war that Hamas launched on us and have cynically continued ever since. Peace cannot be imposed, and peace cannot come by unilateral recognitions or announcements. Peace has to be an outcome of a direct negotiations with Israel and a viable Palestinian partner when that comes at the right time. All throughout the year, with the Irish government position was that it will recognize a Palestinian state when the time is right. And right now, what we are saying, and the time is that the time could not be more wrong. This sends out the wrong message. This does not promote peace. And this actually endangers the possibility of releasing our kidnapped that are still held in Gaza. The signal that it sends to Hamas, that it encourages them, that they benefited from those brutal attacks, this does not bring closer to the release of 125 people who are still kidnapped, held in inhumane conditions in Gaza.
We saw that the Irish foreign minister discussed the first of its kind sanctions on Israel. What would they look like? Can we see these actually coming from Ireland?
We've seen in the past months very concerning statements and steps coming from Ireland. And being pro-Palestinians is, of course, legitimate. And being critical of Israel is, of course, legitimate. And this is not anti-Semitism. But what we are worried about and what we see in the past months increasing is the search for anti-Israeli initiatives that Ireland is searching for and trying to promote. And when that line is crossed between legitimate criticism to taking anti-Israeli steps, for me, as the ambassador to Ireland, I'm very concerned about that. We see the rise of anti-Semitism in Ireland that the Jewish community and the Israeli communities are concerned about. I would want the government of Ireland to recognize this increase in anti-Semitism and to make sure that they are working in order to combat that.
But do you think these sanctions could come soon, your assessment?
We do not know. We do not have any more details, but what we do know is that it's one of the ideas that Ireland has mentioned, but there's not a consensus about it within the EU.
Now, Ambassador, on a personal question, your post in Ireland began shortly before the 7th of October. Tell us, how was it being for these last 8 months in Ireland during such a tumultuous time?
I've arrived in Ireland about a month before the October 7th attacks started and the war started by Hamas. And it has been challenging. All of us diplomats are used to being in the front lines, and we are used to taking a personal toll. We've seen a direct campaign against me, a very personal, full of hate and incitement. And we will not be discouraged. All of us at the embassy, the Jewish community and the Israeli communities, we are all together understanding that the threat is not just in Israel, but there is this threat of delegitimizing Israel that we see in Ireland, and we are working together to combat it. On a personal note, it's obviously, it's not pleasant, it's scary sometimes, but then again, it also reminds me why I'm there and why it is so important to make sure that our voices are heard.
Thank you so much, Israeli Ambassador to Ireland, Dana Erlich.